Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So today, in the ongoing coverage of Lori Vallow and the people who have dropped dead suddenly around her, we're going to take a look back in the history of this case to see where did Chad cross paths with Lori, who has come in and out of Lori's life, and what has happened to all these husbands that she has had. Where have they all gone? And what has happened to some of the other people who have been part of Lori's experience all along? Thank you for joining me today. So we're going back to 1990. To start off with, March 9th, 1990, and a completely separate chain of events. You need to follow along here with this. Chad marries his sweetheart and love of his life, Tammy, March 9th, 1990. Short order after getting married, the two of them relocate to Springville, Utah, and they buy themselves a moderate home, a three-bedroom home where they have room to grow and to start a family. Shortly thereafter, the two of them would start their family and eventually having 5 children in that home. And they were the all typical, family. Chad worked for a living, so did Tammy off and on, but she was more of a housewife and she took care of the children once they came about. And they lived a very happy life. No one was looking at them in any way at all as being absolutely, anything different than what they were. At the same time, while they're living their life in Utah, a completely different state all the way, Lori has married her first husband in Texas. Now, not much is known about Lori's first husband. We don't even have a picture of her first husband or a name, for that matter, that we can confirm. But we have, statements from Lori about what his name may be, but unconfirmed again. That marriage doesn't last long. Lori quickly gets tired of him and his inability to provide much more than the basic means of existence, but she wants more. So she gets rid of him in short order. By 1995, Lori has married her second husband, William Lagoya, Lagioia. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. From here on out, I will refer to him only as William. In 1995, she marries him. And shortly after her marriage, she has her first child, Colby. Colby is a perfectly healthy baby. Not colicky. Everything is going great. Her life is in short order. It seems to be falling together exactly how she planned it to be. But the marriage quickly falls apart. Before they reach their anniversary date, Lori has picked up and left with the baby. She left. By his own account to his family, with no notice. She just picked up and walked out. And this is something that Lori will repeat over and over and over again from here on out, the rest of her life. When everything seems to be going great to everybody else from the outside looking in, and whenever there's a personal issue within her relationship, she just leaves. Absolutely just leave everything behind. I don't need any of it, and just leaves. By 1997, going back to Chad, Chad is living a great life. He's happy. His marriage is doing well. He's working. Everything seems to be doing great. He is a pillar of his community and someone that can be relied on within his actual church. By the fall of 1997, Chad has his first vision. He calls these visions divine visions from God. The second vision he has shortly thereafter is a message from God and tells him that he needs to write his visions down and to catalog them. As he is giving him these direct messages, Chad will eventually use these messages and these visions that he received as the basis for his first series of books that he will write. By 1997, later part of the year, October to be exact, 1997, Lori, although she is married to William, she is starting to feel that she is not receiving enough attention or spiritual guidance from within her church, and she starts to seek religious teachings from other areas and then have group meetings in her home for as little as 4 people and as many as 20 at one time in a small little house. She gathers in as many people around for what she calls Enlightenment Teachings, where they study sections of the Bible and the teachings of different religions, not just the Book of Mormon. It was one of the books that they used, but they used books from different religions to question, to look at these different religions and study all of it together. And by looking back on it in hindsight, you can see that Lori is using these books and these practices and meetings to not only build up who she is as someone of importance for these meetings that people will look up to for guidance, but she's using it as to pick and choose what she wants from everything to build her own beliefs, her own practice. By 2001, Lori and her marriage is done. She divorces her husband, William, and has moved on to husband number 3. Yes, Joseph Ryan is now married to Lori. And what Joseph didn't understand was a complete grasp of who Lori was. There's no way that any logical person would have stepped into this and said, "Whoa, okay, this is normal." But he did. He married her. So now she's married to Joseph Ryan. At some point in the latter part of 2001, 2002, Colby has started to use the last name Ryan. He didn't when they first were married. He still had the same birth name he did on his birth certificate, but later on he would change his last name. They would start going by the last name of Ryan. This is typical in some households. When someone marries, your mother, you may take on the last name of that father. Not always, but it is typical. 2002, Chad Daybell and his wife Tammy finished up on their book, their first book together that they will release, originally titled Tiny Talks with Christ Our Savior. With the help of the publisher Cedar Press, they would eventually change it to just Tiny Talks. And instead of having it in 2 massive volumes, they broke it down into 7 complete volumes. And they're basically a book teaching children the practices of religion and how to live their life the right way through Christ is what their books are about. That book is series is about. Same time, 2002, while Chad and Tammy are living their life over here in a completely different state, Lori is getting a little bit more off the rails. She's already been off the rails before, but now she's going a little bit farther. But just before she completely is off the tracks and derailed completely, she gets pregnant and has Tylee. She gives birth to Tylee, and everything seems to settle down for a period of time afterwards while she's home with Tylee. Keep in mind, Colby is still there in the home at this point. So now she's got the two children there with her, and it is now 2002. At the same time that this is going on, everything seems to be going smooth for Lori. There's a little bit of waves in the ocean, but nothing too bad. By 2004, everything starts to turn completely different for Lori. Her relationship with Joseph hits a point where it's almost unrecoverable, because Lori will refuse, and she will in the future, any outside help at all. She knows everything that she needs to know. The good book has taught her everything that she needs to know. On top of that, somewhere in between 2004 and 2006, she has what she calls her first enlightenment vision. And that is something that she keeps, she kind of gathers it along with her enlightenment gatherings and everything else that she had back in the 90s, and puts it all together into this giant, sphere of knowledge that she's going to teach everybody about. 2006 comes around. Lori, marriage with Joseph Ryan is over with. Before the ink has dried on the final divorce papers from Mr. Ryan, she has moved on and found another man in her life. She has replaced one, bye-bye, goodbye, with another, who again knows nothing about those who came before him other than what Lori wanted to tell him. She describes this man in early 2006 as smart, handsome, a self-made man with a kind heart. Later part of 2006, after a very, very short romance, she will marry Charles Vallow. Lori was keeping everything really under wraps of who she was and where her religious beliefs were going at that time in 2008. Lori starts up in the latter part of 2008. It's not known exactly when in 2008, but there are rumblings that the church that she has been attending would like Lori to stop basically and kind of back off a little bit with her after hours, Bible study. That there have been some people who just are questioning her, where she's really going with this actual Bible study and enlightenment that she is teaching everyone. So in 2008, she kind of backs off a little, just a little. Doesn't know Chad yet. Tammy's still alive. And matter of fact, in the latter part of 2008, Tammy would help with the illustration and the writings with another author who is doing a book herself. Tammy actually is bringing a little bit of money here and there, doing what I guess basically you could call freelance work. Chad and Tammy are still having a wonderful life. Nothing out of the ordinary. Even though Chad has had these visions and everything else, but he's writing books. He's making money. He's working his normal job. Okay? And he's still making money on the side as his side hustle, and he's become a writer. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. I mean, you can look at any writer out there, and they have good works and they have bad works. But Chad is doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's loving his wife. He's taking care of his kids. He's paying his taxes. He's doing everything. His wife is doing whatever she can here and there, and she's bringing in money as well. The latter part of 2008. Again, Lori. Between 2008 and 2015, Lori has backed off on her religious teachings to the point where the church is really worried about her. For that 7-year period, everything seems to somewhat be going right. There is rumblings and there are things that are rumored, even out here in the media now. There are things that are rumored that have happened between that time period. But a lot of it is speculation, and it's undocumented, and people are kind of like, they're grasping at straws and pulling that straw as hard as they can to try to find something to fit in that puzzle in that 7-year period. I've spent 2.5 months trying to find something concrete between 2008 and 2015, but I can't. I can't find anything or anyone who wants to go on the record and actually talk about that period of time. She kept everything that she was doing within just herself and a very close circle. 2015, summer of 2015, Chad and Tammy relocate from Springville, Utah to Salem, Idaho. They buy a house and everything is going good. They didn't need the big house that they had there in Springville because their kids are grown. They don't need that anymore. Now it's basically they're empty nesters, I guess would be the best way to describe it, as some people would. But they move into a nice, smaller home. They don't need as much. Everything is going, the way it should be. Lori, again, 2015, back to that part. She's asked again because she started to ramp up her private, Bible classes again, her studies, the Enlightenment, that she was teaching everybody. That church asked her and Charles to give the message to Lori to back off, to stop, where she's going and stop. Ease it back a little bit. And she does to some extent, but the church is getting very tired of her at this point. They have given her more than enough warnings and said, look, if you want to teach just this, fine. You want to do Bible studies on just this, do that. If not, stop coming. Just stay at home. Charles is welcome anytime he wants. Lori takes these messages as a way that people are picking on her, and she starts to grasp at straws and anything around her, and she starts to build in her mind that the church is against her and that there are issues within her personal life with her and Charles. And she looks at it and she decides, and she's made up in her mind that Charles is stepping outside of the marriage. She said she had proof of it. She said she was going to show this to others, but she never did. And all along, while this is happening, and she's turned her rhetoric and her hatred towards Charles, like she has in every relationship before, she uses Charles's children as a weapon against him. She starts telling Ty Lee that your father has stepped outside the marriage. He's cheating on me. This is what your father is doing. He's a loser. And you can bet as much as she did it for JJ as well. to try to turn JJ against his father, the only father he has ever known. April 3rd, 2018, Joseph Ryan is found dead of an apparent heart attack. The family of Joseph Ryan, even then, didn't believe it. Now, Joseph had a heart ailment, that is known, and he did take medication for his heart ailment. That is known. And it's most likely the real reason why he died. But you're not going to be able to convince the family of it, especially now in hindsight, looking back on all the other people who were dead around Lori. But the family, even then, questioned what really happened in this situation. How did he die? Because he still had visitation to visit his children, JJ and Ty Lee. Even though there was a lot of friction within the home, he tried to schedule his actual visits to visit them and have them around when Charles was out of town, because Charles traveled a lot for work. He was there, and sometimes he'd be gone for 2 weeks at a time. There is no proof that he ever had a relationship outside of the marriage with anyone. But Lori picked at everything around her until she found something that she could run with, and she went after Charles with it. He always denied it, all the way to the end. But Joseph Ryan passes away in 2018. Not even 3 months later, Lori, still married to Charles Vallow, invited doomsday author Chad Daybell on her podcast, the podcast that Lori was on with others. And before then, there's rumors that she was using fake email addresses to lure Chad to her home and to be on the podcast. There very well may have been, underneath Chad's expectation when he did the podcast, that it wasn't just going to be Lori, it was going to be Lori and Charles on that podcast. But when he got there, it was the engineer, it was Lori, it was 2 other people. No Charles. We know that she set up the fake email addresses, but how long did she actually communicate? That we don't know. How long beforehand did she actually do before that? There are rumors that it goes back to 2010, but it doesn't. There's no way to actually confirm that. These are rumors, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing's been actually proven at this point. We may get the proof later on. So February 3rd comes about, 2018. Keep in mind, she's lured Chad to there at least to do the podcast, to talk about his book and his doomsday prophecies, which Lori has become increasingly more fixated on. On February 3rd, 2018, Lori disappeared. Up and vanished. She didn't pack any bags. She didn't take anything with her. She left the 2 kids at home and was gone. Flat out gone. The only 2 kids at the home at the time was Ty Lee and JJ. Gone. She's just gone. Nowhere to be found at all. On February 5th, Charles reports her missing to the police department and fills out a missing persons report on February 5th. February 8th, 3 days later, Lori contacts Charles and says that she's sorry, but she's on a trip of enlightenment. Again, the enlightenment thing comes up again. And he talks with her and convinces her to finally come home. On the 59th day, Lori comes back home. Her and Charles have a long talk. They discuss everything. Charles decides that he's going to contact his attorneys and stop all of the divorce proceedings that he had started while she just up and vanished and abandoned her family. Again, multiple times in the past. When things got tough, she just left. Whenever it's something and she didn't like it, she just left. Now she's come back and she's convinced Charles to drop the divorce proceedings. Most likely because she knows if they go through the divorce, she's not going to get anything. She might get a little bit of child support for each child, but that's it. She isn't going to get anything else. And I'm sure that somewhere along the line that played into exactly why she decided to come back. In the actual divorce decree, the paperwork that Charles had filed with the court, he noted in there that she had become obsessed with near-death and spiritual visions. She had been given a vision from God in her, by her own words and accounts, that she was now eternally marked, married to a prophet from the Mormon Bible, Book of Mormons, named Morini, Moroni, that they were connected forever, that she was a translated being and could never taste death and nothing could hurt her or harm her, and that she has lived several lives in the past, and that she has lived these lives on different planets in our galaxy. This is what's noted in the actual divorce papers that Charles had filed and then taken back, because she had talked him out of actually going through with a divorce. That was the February 8th is when he called the attorney, and then he went in and signed the actual papers to withdraw the actual divorce decree on February 10th and paid up in full the balance that he owed the attorneys. Shortly thereafter, in the entire proceedings, Lori went right back to what she was doing before she took off for that 59 days. She went right back to doing what she was doing, holding the meetings in her home, and now everything was ramped up to a whole new level. And she had weeded out certain people that she believed weren't real believers or followers in what she wanted. How many people are we talking about? We don't know. There is no actual proof of how many people that were around in that time. Shortly, they're going forward again to another point. June, the following year, everything is very rocky. And for Charles, their marriage wouldn't have lasted this far and this long if it wasn't for the fact that Charles had to travel to actually work. He wasn't at home all the time. If he would have been there and had a job where he went home every night, this marriage never would have lasted this long. It would have been gone a long time before this. But now we're in June of 2019. Melanie Brudeau, her niece, tells her husband, Brandon, that she wants a divorce. We know that Melanie was one of the people who was in this inner circle of Enlightenment Teachings that Lori had been giving there in her home. June of 19, Brandon says Melanie in his paperwork with the court, while they're fighting over custody of the children, that she has started to follow Lori's believings and that she has joined a cult. This is Brandon's filings with the court for during the custody part of their actual divorce. July 11th, 2019, Charles is shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Lori, later on the same day, threw a party. Regardless of what time the party started, at 8 o'clock that night, or shortly before 8 p.m. that night, The neighbor next door filed a complaint about parking and noise from the home with the homeowners association. This, ladies and gentlemen, is part of public record. They have released the actual logbook for when the homeowners association secretary logged it into the book. So maybe the party didn't start in the afternoon. Maybe the party did start that evening, but it was a short little party. They had the party outside and inside, but it was mainly outside because the house was empty. There was very few furnishings in the actual home. Now, she had been in this home for 3 weeks and didn't buy any couches, no end tables, coffee tables, anything like that. And if you watch the actual police chest cam video of when they come in to, find Charles after he's been shot by Alex, it's an empty room. It's a big open empty room with hardwood floors and nothing around at all furniture-wise. The next day after Charles is shot and killed, Lori texts Charles' 2 eldest sons back east and lets them know their father has died the next day. She refuses in every single subsequent text after that to ever answer how, when, where their father died. She ends communication a week later by blocking both of their numbers. And we know that subsequently they moved. They got out of town. And they would eventually end up in Rexburg, Idaho. Who moved to Rexburg, Idaho, you might ask? Lori, Tylee, Alex Cox, JJ, Melody, all ended up in Rexburg, Idaho. Melanie, divorced, leaves, and then, they're all in Idaho together because they all believe what Lori's been telling them, that she is the divine person to lead them. That's in August. September rolls around. A couple weeks later, Lori enrolls JJ in Kennedy Elementary School there in Rexburg. She refuses to allow them to test JJ for his autism level and to figure out what programs he needs, and says, well, can't we just rely upon the actual testing that he had at his previous school? The school there at Kennedy. Kennedy says, well, yeah, we'll see what that paperwork says, and if it was a recent evaluation of what he needs, we'll go with that. While they await for the transcripts to arrive there at the school, on September 8th is the last day that we know of where Tylee is alive and with the family. The photos of her taken at Yellowstone have JJ, Tylee, and they have Alex Cox in the photo. And obviously Lori is taking the photo. But that wasn't discovered until much later on, that actual photo. On September 23rd, Lori picks up JJ from school. On the 24th of September, Lori calls the school and withdraws him, and then goes in and formally signs to remove JJ from Kennedy Elementary, stating that she is going to homeschool JJ from here on out. JJ hasn't been seen or heard from since. Nobody knows what happened to JJ after that. October 1st, Lori Vallow rents a storage unit at Storage Plus. Some of the items that have been placed in this storage unit were a bicycle, most likely belonging to Tylee, an older bicycle. Why she would take that from Arizona all the way there, we don't know. A bicycle belonging to JJ. A memory blanket made by a family member on the adoption and the life of JJ to that point. Photo albums of JJ, Charles, and the family. Other photo albums of Tylee and personal items that belong to just Tylee in a bin, a cardboard box inside of a bin. Clothing, some blankets, a tire, and other miscellaneous unneeded garbage items. These are the items that were found in that storage unit later on after she abandoned it. What's interesting about the storage unit is between October 1st and the 17th of October, there is video footage of Lori pulling up to the storage unit, putting things into the storage unit, and then taking things out of the storage unit, and then coming back days later and putting things in it, the same things back in it, and then taking things out. Keep in mind, the townhome that she lived in there has a garage. They're on the back side of the actual townhomes, and nothing was in the garage. She used zero amount of the actual storage space in the garage space that she had. Plus, there in the townhome, they have storage itself. Why did she feel the need to rent a storage space at Storage Plus for these 7 to 10 items when they all would easily fit in a closet there inside the home or a storage locker that are available for rent there at the townhome or in the garage space? Unless she didn't plan on ever coming back for him. On the video footage, there are 2 men who come in and out of that storage unit with her, putting items in and taking items out. What is really important is on October 2nd, Brandon Bordeaux says that he was shot at by somebody driving a black color Jeep, and that he knows whose Jeep it was. But there was no way the Jeep was being driven by the person who owned it. He knew that person very well. He trusted that person immensely and knew that that person would never do anything to harm him. Later on, when the Jeep was finally found, it turned out to be the Jeep that belonged to Charles Vallow. Remember, Charles is dead. He had been shot by Alex Cox already and is long gone. On the video footage from the storage unit, you can see multiple times Lori and somebody who looks like he's probably Alex Cox, who has the body fit of Alex and is obviously not a heavier set gentleman like Chad. You can see them removing and putting in a storage unit a seat that looks like it's from the back of a Jeep or a Jeep Wrangler or some other two-row seat. It's a bench seat. And a spare tire with a rim on it. They wheel it in and then they wheel it out. Later on, in the storage unit, a tire is found in there with no rim. And that tire wouldn't fit any vehicle that Lori owned, any vehicle that Chad owned, and certainly wouldn't fit Cox's big old jacked up pickup truck, nor would it fit any car that Tammy owned. The tire is a smaller tire that doesn't match anything, any other vehicle. It has to be a herring. A herring to throw the police off if they ever found it. Why is this tire here? It doesn't match anything that they own. It could have been as simply as a tire that they found at a garbage dump or a donation center, but something that screams of being a herring to throw the police off. So Alex was most likely, this is not documented, there's no proof of it there at all, but Alex was most likely the person who shot at Brandon Bordeaux, trying to kill him. And if he did kill him, the reason why the seat was removed was so they could put the body in the back of the Jeep. Simple as that. His ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, who was in a custody fight with him at the time, is now part of Lori's group. Another odd incident that took place before Tammy died was Tammy came home at one point and somebody jumped out from behind her car wearing a black ski mask and shot at her multiple times with a paintball gun. When she started screaming for Chad, that person took off running around the back of her home, not down the street, past her home, through the backyard. And then Chad came running out through the front to be there, the knight in shining armor. Was this a dry run for Tammy's eventual death? Was Chad involved in that? Was it someone trying to gain the courage to be able to finally shoot someone, like Alex would eventually shoot and kill Charles? And if you want to check that out, that little tidbit about Tammy, she posted it on her Facebook, and you can also find screenshots online. Chad moved into Lori's home, the townhouse next to Melania, her niece. Chad was there at the home the day the police came to do the welfare check on JJ. He tried to leave the residency when they knocked on the front door and act like he didn't know who Lori was, JJ was, Tylee was. He tried to act like they weren't, he didn't know who they were. He was just somebody in the neighborhood. But they said no. And they stopped him. And then he admitted that he actually did know them. But he was just a friend. He was just coming by and didn't know anything. And then Lori came to the door and said that JJ, as we all know, was in Arizona staying with a friend. And that Tylee wasn't there at the time. Well, we know that the story about JJ living in Arizona with a friend was a lie, because later on that night, when they called that friend from the phone number that Lori gave them, they found out it was all a lie. And that friend refused to lie for her and said, no, he's never been here. I'm not lying for her. He's not here. When they went back the next day, Lori and Chad were gone. The following day, Chad had removed a large sum of money, the most that he could get out of the bank at that time, in cash. And the two of them vanished. Nobody knew where they went for the next couple of weeks. And then they turned up in Hawaii. And now we know everything that has happened from Hawaii onward. Lori would be eventually extradited, arrested and extradited back to Idaho, where she sits in jail now. The countless bail reduction hearings that we've had since then. And yet, nobody knows where Tylee is and where JJ is. Still. That is what can be confirmed. Everything else has been speculation, rumors, or can't be proven. Even the stories about Lori believing that her children were zombies, possessed, walking the earth, and leaving the only way that they could actually ascend to the next highest conscious level is to be relieved from their human bodies. We don't know if that's real. We don't have a second source to corroborate that statement. I feel so bad for those two kids. I feel bad for anybody that meets Lori, that crosses paths with her, even in jail. Because in jail, she's trying to do the same damn thing that she had been doing out here in the free world with her Enlightenment teachings. But instead, she's doing it with inmates inside of the county jail. And eventually, someone's going to believe her. Will she ever have to face justice and answer where Tylee and JJ are and what happened to them? We hope. We can all pray, do whatever you want, rub rocks together, pray to a higher being, or just have a good thought in your heart for two children who were affected by all this madness that their mother has caused around them their entire lives. Thank you for watching today. And you, stay safe out there.